All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I also want to acknowledge that my fellow board member, Trina Loomis, she will not be joining us this evening. The other 8 of us will be here to weigh out these recommendations on the 2 rezonings. To start, I'd actually like to make a motion to change the agenda. I would like to reverse the order of the action agenda and have Northbrook go first and Long Creek Retail go second.
Second.
All right, any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor of the change? Any opposed? All right, thank you. All right, next up, need to consider approval of the August 27th, 2024 regular meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion on the minutes? Okay, all those in favor of approval? Any opposed? All right, thank you. Okay. Coming up on public comments. Many of you know this already. It's 3 minutes is what you're allotted. Other people can, of course, donate or gift their time up to a maximum of 9 minutes. We do have a couple examples of that this evening that we will go through. We're going to be timing you from here and there because we're not getting the actual big timer to work. So when we get to about a minute, we'll kind of help you out with maybe a hand signal or something just to try and keep you on track there. And of course, with anything, to the people coming up, we absolutely want to hear what you have to say, and that would be the goal, is that we are able to focus our attention on whoever is up at the podium delivering their message. So with the, let's see, the first public comments be Mr. Will DePriest. And Mr. DePriest, it looks like you will have 9 minutes. And I'm just going to call out the couple time donations first. Chris, is it Jobson or Jobson? Jobson? Okay, thank you, sir. And Carol Power. Hi, Carol, thank you. Okay, Mr. DePriest, your 9 minutes is accounted for, sir. Name and address, and we'll go ahead and start timer for you.
Then it was to get retail included and make a lovely boardwalk to enrich the neighborhoods. No retail has been proposed yet. Then it was to avoid CB flex warehouses or offices because they can't be built as attractive as mini storage or, say, an outdoor dog kennel. Then it was about the mini storage and a daycare, even when the daycare could be built under the existing CB zoning. Then it was about a dog park, but a dog park alongside a 55-mile-per-hour super road wasn't exactly a safe idea. But a daycare playground adjacent to the same super road? I've confirmed with an official source that an outdoor kennel is now included. So now we know it's at least about a daycare, a mini storage, and a kennel. Here's a joke. A daycare, a mini storage, and a kennel walked into a peaceful neighborhood. The kennel complained about how noisy the neighborhood is. It's a joke. Okay, I at least needed a smile from somebody, come on. I'm disturbed by all the morphing, late-breaking submissions, and verbal inclusions that shake the public trust in this process. Are you? Justification, the petition asks for reclassification of property to a conditional zoning district with 3 ordinance modifications. A buffer reduced from 80 to 35 feet, allowing a daycare playground in the front yard adjacent to Sanford Road. Planning staff said that the side yard parking is limited to 45%, but Lot C is still at 100%. Reclassification falls under Article 11, the amendment process. Thanks, Brian, for pointing it out to me. I'm sure the board knows it, but I'm reading this for everybody else's benefit. The purpose of Article 11, the purpose is to provide a means for amending the text of these regulations and the classification of any parcel of land. That's the purpose of the article this process all falls under. It also says the purpose is not to relieve particular hardships nor to confer special privileges or rights on any person, but only to make adjustments necessary in response to changed conditions or changes in public policy. So which purpose is it? Is it to respond to changing conditions or changes in public policy, or is it to convey special privileges or rights to a particular person or relieve hardships? And yet, the community preschool of Huntersville, less than a mile away from this proposed daycare, has a setback of about 190 feet from Sanford Road. 190 feet. This board required them to put the playground behind the building away from the road anyway. These requested ordinance modifications appear more like hardship relief or granting special privileges and rights. But relief due to lot size sounds more like it should be following the quasi-judicial process like a board of adjustments, not reclassification. It appears you have to decide today whether you will recommend to the town board to confer relief and special privileges and rights to this developer. Missing major information. But the conditional rezoning ordinance requires the petition shall submit all yards, buffers, screening, and landscaping required by these regulations. Chris Boyd actually asked for that at the last meeting. It was never submitted. Why hasn't the outdoor kennel been included in the submitted plans? We know preliminary sketches go back to June. Shouldn't it be included now? A TIA is required because of the daycare. It's missing. What about the request to NCDOT for a traffic light study at the Ambassador Academy intersection? Did that happen? Planning staff was supposed to do that. As a decision maker during my career, I'm reluctant to make a recommendation when I don't have all the required information in front of me. It forces me to put my reputation on the line for someone else. Consistency. That same Article 11 and reclassification process requires you all, to ensure the proposal is consistent with the overall character of existing development in the immediate vicinity of subject property. How is a 100-dog outdoor kennel consistent with residential housing and serene nature trails? Is this daycare being held to the same standards as the one mile down the road? Would you approve that kennel within hearing distance of your home? So what is in this for you? Well, your integrity, as Michael Pollard said at the last meeting. Are you prepared to recommend to the town board that this petition is complete, consistent with abutting communities, and qualifies for these ordinance modifications under Article 11? In summary, this petition lacks transparency, doesn't fit the purpose of this reclassification process, appears to me missing required documentation, feels like it's being treated differently than similar projects, and leaves the residents adjacent to exceptionally undesirable uses. All this, and we still don't even know what surprise is left to be on the fourth lot. Beyond the mini storage, which doesn't fit the proposed location, a daycare on a highway, and a huge dog kennel immediately in the vicinity of residential communities. This feels like It's just all about pushing square pegs into a round hole. It just doesn't seem like it makes sense or fits. As our letter to the board stated, we remain open to you guys got a copy of it. We remain open to a two-way conversation with the petitioner. Unfortunately, that hasn't occurred yet. So knowing all that, why would you put your name on this petition? Why would you sign up for it? Then again, you could vote not recommended. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Natalie Gould. Is it Gould? Yeah. Okay. So if you would, state your name, and then you will have 3 minutes.
Natalie Marzuka Gould, and
It's public comments, so it's not time for that. We've got it.
do I go?
Yep.
Do I start?
Go for it.
My 2 elementary-age daughters, husband and I, purchased a lovely home in Oak Farm last winter and are slated to move in late fall. We were recently made aware of the developer's plans to remove much of the natural habitat to build a storage facility, a potential dog kennel, and a daycare facility. We immediately contacted our realtor as we felt blindsided. The main reason for investing in Oak Farm was the farm-like, tranquil feel of the community. It was a hidden gem, hugged by aged trees and intimate walking trails. The perfect neighborhood for our 2 little girls to safely ride their bikes and roam the streets. Our realtor informed us the land was recently sold to a developer, and they doubt the town of Huntersville would approve such tasteless investments off Sam Fur. There were already 12+ not full storage facilities in the area, and the preschool of Huntersville took over 3.5 years to satisfy the board. They added the same developer attempted to build unsolicited and unwanted structures in both Cornelius and Huntersville historically, and many of his attempts have been rejected. We felt relieved at her feedback, but to further protect our future home, we came to the last meeting to better understand the intentions of the developer and the board that represents us as tax-paying homebuyers. For context, my family is not opposed to a mixed-use development of retail and/or shops that better serves the community and potentially creates a walkable, friendly township or plaza and places the community members in the foreground. However, that is not what is on the table. Instead, this board is potentially allowing a developer to knock down mature trees, disturb a natural habitat, upset hundreds of families and taxpayers to basically store the stuff of neighboring communities and businesses alike, add a dog kennel that will further disturb the area via barking dogs, and introduce biohazards such as fecal and medical waste from the kennel animals. On top of that, allow a daycare where traffic patterns on an already busy road will be worsened from rushing parents. Have any of you been in that area during rush hour? I asked the board, does any of this make sense? Our neighboring communities have halted these developers' attempts. What do you plan to do? How will you vote? What if this was your house, your home? I ask you on this board, have you investigated how large moving vans and trucks will disrupt our community and our kids who will be at play riding their bikes in Oak Farm and Northbrook? Have you investigated the types of people who frequent these types of businesses and establishments and the items that will be stored in front of our homes? Have you thought about the unsolicited attention this will bring to our neighborhoods in the evening while we break bread with our families in our homes? Have you conducted a physics analysis of force of impacts of one of these large vans, God forbid, coming into the community, hitting a child? For frame of reference, an 18-wheeler going 50 miles per hour needs 400 feet to stop under the best conditions. Imagine that turning and hitting a kid on a bike. That's the current speed limit right outside our community, AKA where this playground is gonna be. Friendly reminder, the last fatal accident was this past summer, May, to be exact. What about the number of kids at the high school who 5 days a week, twice a week, who are altering traffic patterns as new drivers directly in front of the community coming in while other major traffic and freight trucks are coming out? How about the environmental hazards from trucks and car exhaust in our communities into the daycare? And what about parking overflow on a street we pay our HOA to maintain?
Ms. Gould, that would be the end of your time.
With our buffer reduction?
That would
you're
be the
getting
end of your
400.
time. Thank you very much, ma'am.
And there's 471 families.
Sally Henson, you are up next. You have 6 minutes. And David Helms. Where's David Helms? You are David Helms. Perfect. Thank you, sir. Sally, if you would.
Hey, Sally Henson, 2401
Thank you.
Street Drive. You gotta follow one angry mom with another. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak today on the proposed rezoning 2404 project. My name is Sally Henson, and I reside directly behind Parcel A. Lucky me. I, like many residents of our community, am a parent of young children. I value the importance of quality childcare, and I understand the need for facilities like the one being proposed for Parcel A. I'm not opposed to a daycare facility, far from it. I understand the need. But as a parent in a neighborhood filled with young families, I have to prioritize the safety and well-being of my children and our neighborhood's children. The current plan does not do enough to address these concerns. I have serious reservations about the proposed plan for the daycare, particularly one, the plan that everybody has already stated, for building a playground next to a busy highway with a speed limit of 55 miles per hour that's frequently traveled at 70. And second, the increased cut-through traffic from Samford to McCord Road it will bring to our neighborhood with daily drop-off and pickup. I'm just going to remind you, I live on Retreat Drive, so I see this daily. I promise I'm a good person to speak to this. And truly, I invite everyone in this room to attempt to make a left-hand turn out of our neighborhood during the school traffic times. You can't. I'd like to point out that Northbrook is a relatively new community, just 2.5 years old, and is primarily made up of these young families like mine. With so many children living here, safety is our #1 priority. We've already experienced significant traffic problems for the neighborhood being so new, and the situation is alarming. In the past few months alone, within this calendar year, we've had a tree, a light pole, and a traffic sign hit. All hit and runs. I mention this with the understanding that this audience is not responsible for addressing the traffic issues, but rather to bring light to the situation. In May, as it was just spoken to, a fatal, yes, fatal, there was a death, unfortunately, accident occurred on Samford between Oak Farm and Northbrook, which led to highway closure. This closure rerouted traffic through our neighborhoods, during which a child was struck by a vehicle. These instances alone should raise flags and prompt careful consideration of the potential implications additional development and subsequent traffic may bring. I couldn't have made that up. The sirens. Continuing with the theme of safety, the inclusion of dog kennels as part of this project is yet another issue. I understand the need for childcare, but neighboring it with dog kennels, that raises concerns, come on. With dog kennels comes noises, odors, and a threat to safety for surrounding communities. As residents, we shouldn't have to worry about constant barking or the potential environmental impacts on our family's quality of life in our own backyards. Not to mention how the same noises, odors, and poor aesthetics will negatively affect property values and therefore the property taxes and subsequent town budget moving forward. We moved to this community to raise our children in a peaceful, safe environment. And I say this as a dog owner. I love dogs. Dog kennels have no place in our community. Lastly, I'm highly concerned about the proposed reduction of the buffer from 80 to 35 feet. The 80-foot buffer was designed to protect our homes from the noise, the traffic, and the disruptions that come with commercial developments. Reducing it by more than half would bring any business much too close to our homes. This reduction will only lead to noise and loss of privacy that will directly affect our families who rely on safe, quiet spaces to live. I urge you to vote against rezoning. You have a civic duty to protect the families that live here by keeping the initial zoning of corporate business. The buffer needs to remain at 80 feet to give our families the protection we deserve, and dog kennels should not even be on the table. Most importantly, the traffic issues that already exist must be taken into account to ensure that we're not putting more children in harm's way. We all want what's best for our community, but that means making sure new developments are safe and responsible for the people that are already living there. I hope the town and the developer will take these concerns into serious consideration as you both move forward with your decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ed McCormick. Ed, you have 9 minutes. Let me address who's donating their time. Mark Asante. Thank you, sir. And Danielle Asante. Hi, thank you. All right. All right, Mr. McCormick, if you would.
Ed McCormick, 21114 Bangfire Lane, Huntersville, North Carolina. And I'm a resident of Northbrook, and I'm also on the Northbrook HOA. And when I'm not messing around with those kinds of things, I like to wander around Home Depot and Lowe's. I do quite a bit of work, and I'm always buying stuff. Then I go down to the grocery store and pick up stuff. And the last couple of days while I've been doing this, I decided to do an informal survey. So I don't know who these people are that I've bumped into at these various places, but I've engaged them in a conversation concerning dog kennels. The basic question I asked is, hey, question for you. If I proposed building a 100-dog kennel in your development, adjacent to your development, near your lot line or in your neighborhood or near your neighborhood, would you like that or not? Would you support it or would you not? To a person, it was like, no. Why would anyone do something like that? That's not where dog kennels belong. So granted, it was 11 people spanning from Home Depot, Lowe's to Publix and a couple neighborhoods, but it was universal. And all of them described themselves as dog lovers, but they also described themselves as, we know what a kennel will bring, nonstop noise, and many of the other things you've already heard about. I know at the end of these meetings, we don't get to provide feedback on what the developers share. But I will tell you that if you're told that this kennel will be quiet, there will be no barking, the appropriate response would be, prove it. You've got to be able to show me, Mr. Developer, that there is such a thing as a kennel that won't transmit sound into the adjacent homes where this is going to be built. And that can only be done if a PE, acoustical certified engineer, reviews the drawings of the building and will literally stake his or her credentials that that's going to be a quiet building. I seriously doubt there's an engineer in the United States that would take that task because dogs bark. 100 dogs bark. They bark all day, all night, sometimes not all the time. Maybe when people are walking on the trails nearby, who knows? But dogs bark because that's what dogs do. We don't need that. We got enough noise from Sam Furr already. In my heart of hearts, I honestly believe if I repeated this survey across Davidson, Cornelius, and Huntersville, I could probably get, with statistical significance, 80 to 85% of the living residents in this area to all say the same thing. Why would you put a dog park in a neighborhood? What were you thinking? And I honestly believe, as you've been challenged by other speakers, would you want this in your neighborhood, at your neighborhood entrance, adjacent to your property? I really don't think in my heart of hearts you do. I don't think anyone does. So why would you inflict that on us by allowing it to happen with an SP designation? It doesn't have to happen. It makes no sense. It's like putting a sewage treatment facility at the marina, a prison in the schoolyard. Just because you can build these things doesn't mean you should build them. There's a right place and a wrong place, and we're counting on your judgment, not an analysis of what's legal and not legal. What's your analysis of what's the right thing to do for Huntersville residents, and the people who just spent millions buying these 200 homes that we're now putting a dog kennel in front of? So honestly, I don't think there's any way that noise cannot be considered a major neighborhood nuisance, and I'm sure your police officials can tell you they get dog bark calls already. And with 100 dogs living in front of 100 people, there's probably gonna be 100 more calls coming in. I want to touch briefly on the buffer situation. I want to talk specifically about the 476-foot overhead view, satellite photo, whatever you want to call it, that's been shown 3 times now, showing that there's 476 feet from the edge of the mini warehouse to a home in Northbrook. I could probably show anyone a satellite view of their house, and from that they could discern I can get from my roof to my driveway without a ladder. Satellite photos deprive you of the opportunity to see all the reality that's there. They're not perfect. There's huge elevation changes between where that building is going and where the houses are. The true property line for Northbrook residents, Northbrook property, is only going to be, if approved, 30 feet from that building, three-story building. What are you going to do to buffer a three-story building in 30 feet? And I also think it's grossly unfair to pick a point 476 feet away from a building and say, you probably won't see it from here, but then maybe you would. We could pick a point on Lake Norman on an island and say, you can't see it from here. That's very arbitrary. 30 feet from our lot line is what we're interested in. The buffer should really not be approved. We got 2 other lots out there that are looking for something to build on them. Put the storage facility on a lot that fits a storage facility. Find something else to stick on the little bitty lot. It's that simple. The last thing, other speakers have touched on it, and I'll close on it. I've only got a couple minutes left. A lot of things have changed in this project, and a number of things are being proposed that are very offensive and we feel unfair to the residents who've chosen to live here. There's still 2 lots, 2 big building parcels. Well, we don't know what's going on. Yet if we approve SP, we may never find out until it's too late. Just like the kennel kind of popped up at the last minute, because once you build a kennel and it makes noise, you can't undo it. What is going to be planned and put on those other lots that we're not even talking about yet that would be facilitated by an SP variance? That's just not right. If we really want to build that storage facility, and SP is what's needed for that, then do it for that lot, but don't grant that right across all the other lots till we know what's going there. They can build a daycare without SP. You might need SP to build on that tiny lot, even though I think it's wrong by reducing the buffers. But don't give it to the other lots until you know it's going there, because who knows what they'll come up with. I mean, a dog kennel in a neighborhood, what's next? It's just frightening to think about it, and it's not fair to the residents to have to live on edge for weeks, months, or years wondering what's going to pop up there someday. It's just not right. And you are the only folks that stand between us and some peace of mind and peace of neighborhood. And we're really asking for you to support us, the citizens, in doing what's right for our neighborhoods. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Last but certainly not least, Robin Hahn. Robin, you have 9 minutes. If I can just confirm the donators of time. Looks like Bruce Klein. Bruce, there's Bruce, and Kirk Hahn. That's you? Are you sure? You say, okay.
I can verify that.
All right, that seems,
I live
I mean, it seems like you would be able to verify. I just, there was a little uncertainty. I didn't mean to startle you with that. So you have 9 minutes.
All right, thank you. Robin Hahn, Pinole Pine Circle, Huntersville. I don't need that much time. I'm going to paraphrase a lot of what I had because a lot of it's already been said. I don't think you want to hear it again, but I will tell you the dog kennels is a problem. None of you want to have a dog kennel in your front yard. None of you want to listen to dogs barking all day. But if you accept this, there's 180 families that are going to be exposed to this. There are over 180 homes in these 2 developments. We are in our yard, my husband and I, all day. We have a little farm. So we're outside all day. This will turn our retirement home into a nightmare with the noise. The developer has said he wants to do great things for Huntersville. I say let's start by doing responsible things for the residents. Let's work together to make this something we can all appreciate. I don't think anybody would appreciate dog kennels in their yard or close to their yard. When Willowbrook was started, about 2 years in, one night we're home, a knock on the door. There's nobody out there at this time. So we go to the door, and it's 2 very pissed off police officers. Well, what do you want? Well, Willowbrook, a lady over there apparently put in a complaint that my dog is barking and keeping her awake. Well, my dog's not barking. Yes, they are. We're standing down at the creek listening to it. Oh, well, let's go have a look-see. So we go out in the middle of the dark night in our pajamas. My dogs are sound asleep. We had to wake them up. What she heard was a fox. Now, a fox doesn't make as much noise as one dog, much less 100 dogs. How many complaints is HPD going to get when you put 100 dogs in front of 180 families? Are we going to create a problem and then later decide how to fix it? Let's just don't make the problem to start with. I suggest until kennels is removed that we deny this petition till we get something better for our families. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robin. All right, we are going to jump into the action agenda. And we did, of course, change the order. So that would bring Northbrook Storage up first.
Mr. Chairman, before you get started, I need to recuse myself as there's a conflict of interest on this.
Okay?
I'll make a motion to recuse Mr. Henson for this case.
Second.
All right, any discussion on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? All right. I know. All right, so first item on the agenda now, consider recommendation on, or of rezoning, 24-04, which is Northbrook Storage located on Samford Road. Mr. Richards. All right, thank you, sir. Any questions for staff?
Clarification on, I don't know if we're at this point of the site plan, but for the proposed daycare, one of the public speakers mentioned parking being side versus back, being 100% versus 40%. Okay. And I guess side yard, it's on a corner, so it's kind of, which perspective you're. Okay. Okay.
Other questions for staff? Go.
Talk just a little bit. The last time we met, we did not have the traffic impact analysis.
Correct.
And if you could just brief us in terms of what you have assessed from the traffic impact analysis, and at what point, I know many arteries have a tendency to break at some level, meaning that the ability to negotiate them becomes extremely difficult. Talk a little bit about that based on what you found and what the state has come back to you with.
Sure. So due to the introduction of the daycare and all the additional uses there, the state is requiring a revision to the TIA that is occurring right now. Engineering staff has deferred to the state's DOT. Whatever NCDOT requires is what Mr. Palillo will have to install. There will not be negotiation. We cannot negotiate DOT requirements through our board to Mr. Palillo. So if they say you have to do a turn lane, he will be doing a turn lane.
So we don't, at this point, have a full appreciation for what the state's going to provide or
Correct.
require?
Yep.
When would we know that?
That's a great question. Whenever the engineers at NCDOT and with Mr. Palillo's team work that out. That will be a condition of the approval. Whatever they require is what will be installed.
Brian, the letter we read from the Northbrook and Oak Farm HOA, talking about, I'll just read, trees within the swim at 10 feet or less from the buffer line will be disturbed and die. The plan is currently drawn will damage the wetlands, function and filter and buffer for water flow. Can you just address that? Is that a concern for the staff or?
Yeah, that's not a concern. You can see these are rezoning plans. They're not construction level drawings. They're conceptual in nature. Things will move. Yes, we understand that you cannot build right up to that swim buffer line. You're going to be 5-10 feet back from that for construction. Can't touch it. That's something that does get identified when we move to construction drawings, if this were to get approved.
So just a quick clarification on that. Like if I'm on site, it's now full-blown construction site. The swim buffer and all of its changing directions is fully delineated.
Correct.
And nothing
Correct.
inside of that.
To
So it
ensure
has
that-
to be,
to
so
try
you
to-
would have to leave the room to perform whatever.
Correct. So what happens when you identify where that swim buffer is and there are trees that are to be saved in that area, you go out from the tree drip line plus 5 feet, and then there'll be a limits of disturbance fencing there.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
So with the changes in parcel A at the daycare, so with, before the planning board was kind of not recommending approval, but now with the changes, you are recommending approval on parcel A for the daycare?
They have satisfied our
Okay.
concerns, sure.
Great.
And the daycare is permitted by right today, is that correct?
Correct. The only issue is it's not on the corner, so that's why they're asking for the modification for it to be pushed further into the site.
Repeat that.
So if you were to build this by right, and I'm not sure if this works, this building being a corner condition, this building would need to go up into this area right here. Due to topography, drainage patterns, an easement, a utility easement for NCDOT, they're asking for relief to put the building further into the site, and they would like to utilize that area for the playground. We had safety concerns, they've agreed to put a guardrail and extra plantings.
Okay, thank you.
Following up on Michael's, I know this is more NCDOT, but stoplight conversation, was that brought up anymore, or is that, I know that we don't facilitate, we don't drive that car, but any more conversation about that with the school?
I have not had any of those conversations. DOT will evaluate that. I know we put an ask out to them for a signal warrant study. Those take a long time, but we've asked.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm awfully concerned about children and daycares. Tell me about this guardrail and how this buffer zone is to keep kids out of the road.
Sure, so what you'll have is you'll have along Highway 73, this 10-foot multi-use path will be pushed back into the site. You'll have a large row of street trees, a second row of street trees, a guardrail that is rated for the highway. You'll have heavy evergreens here and additional trees here. You've got quite a number of barriers between the travel lane and the playground area. Sure, we could do that.
I'm a little bit conflicted in my thinking about this, only because often we look at best practices of looking at daycare children. You want a clear line of vision. And I'm hearing now trees between them and the road. So it doesn't jive with best practices, is all I'm saying.
I can't speak to the best practices of a daycare.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I can't speak to the best practices of a daycare.
Well, looked a little bit at them, and it's always about line of vision to be able to see the kids. And if you got trees, it's hard as dickens to see kids.
That would be the case, yes.
And why not a fence, by the way?
They're putting there will be a fence there as well. Yeah, they've got, all the playground areas have to be fenced in per state ordinance. And again, they're asking to install a guardrail along 73, plus 2 rows of street trees, plus additional plantings.
Just so I understand, the trees are on the outside border, right? The line of sight would still be there from the daycare, right?
Internal to the playground,
Right.
yes, correct.
Okay.
Mr. Richards, can you review and even just from a slide perspective, if it's already there, currently today, what is the applicant allowed to do by right?
We're gonna have to mix these lists together. So on the left-hand side, you've got corporate business, so offices, distributed businesses, all of those on the left-hand side. I'll give you just a minute to take a look at those. You've got uses by right, uses with conditions. Those conditions are staff administered, so as long as they meet those things, they can get their permit. Down at the bottom, you see with special use permit, that would require another hearing from the boards. Okay, let's continue on over to here. You can see what's excluded with corporate business. Those top two on the upper left, those are some we consider more offensive uses that are allowed in corporate business.
Okay, and you did actually answer one of my follow-up questions, and that's when it's by right, but with conditions. That's a condition process that just is administrative. It does not come before
Correct.
any of the normal
Correct.
board. Okay. Sir?
Yep.
Another question for you is when we go through these and an applicant brings forth a rezoning, and it may have multiple parcels, it may be a single parcel, multiple buildings, whatever. Is it a requirement to know what is going in every one of those buildings ahead of time?
No, and often that's the case that you don't know. They say, that's why you have the list of uses in each zoning category. You may have 1 or 2 key tenants they use to anchor and lure other tenants there. But no, quite often, you do not have a list of all the identified tenants.
Okay.
Do we ever go to the point where we parse out the ones that are, the uses are unknown and use a separate rezoning to address those, or is it?
For 20 years, no. I mean, you might have like a grocery tenant, and then you've got your outside buildings, and you will label C-store for a gas station. You won't know if it's an Exxon or if it's this or that. But no, 90% of the time, you do not have all the uses identified.
Okay. So A, we've got parcel A is a
Parcel A is a daycare.
Parcel B is unknown, except for it's on that list somewhere of
Correct.
conditions. Parcel C is conditioned storage.
Yep.
And parcel D is no longer a dog
Correct.
kennel.
Yes,
And
you'll have-
it's back to the list,
Correct.
right? Throw the list up there one more time and let me
Sure.
peruse it.
So everything here in black, minus the commercial kennel.
And the 2 businesses that we know about cannot be, I mean, it wouldn't be good for them anyway, but cannot be replicated on the other.
Correct. They've agreed, correct, they've agreed not to have a second daycare or a second mini warehouse.
So what happens like if the daycare would like go out of business and the developer still has it? I mean, not necessarily a daycare would possibly go back in that space. It just has to meet these,
Yeah,
one of these
You
uses.
could have another daycare come in. Obviously, you're going to build a specific building for that, so likely that that would happen, but if it weren't, you could upfit that building, you could put an office, you could put a government building, you could put a laboratory, any of these uses there.
Okay.
Regarding TIA, and Jody's question made me think of it. Say, this goes through, or anything really, and we know right now A and C. If tenant or business or whatever, B and D become known, what happens to the TIA at that point?
Sure, great question. We would go through a TI determination again to see if that is an intensification or an equal use that's already proposed in the existing TIA. If it's an intensification, they would need to go through and update the TIA and make any changes, on physically in there that have to happen.
So it's not that, say, a business that falls in the approved list for B or D by right at that point, they don't get like a free pass. They
Correct.
still have, okay.
Correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Two questions, Brian. Going back to like the special purpose by right uses, commercial uses including office. Can you give us a general description of what a commercial use might be?
Long list. Matter of fact, I've got the definition in here. Oop, there you go. There's a long list. I do want to point out, there's a second part at the bottom. These are exclusions. Professional offices, doctor's office, banks, financial services, healthcare. There's a long list there. All the way down to the beginning of the sentence that says excluded. Typically what you see is, a Rosedale shopping center, those types of uses. Those are considered commercial.
Typically more retail and oriented. Okay. Okay. And my second one, can you go to your exclusions page, please? So today, again, I'm trying to start on the premise of what is allowed today. If nothing happens, somebody else owns this, what can they do today? And are we improving our situation or not? And hotels and motels, today, again, that could be a use that could go out there, but
Correct.
if this does go through, at least that is no longer a use that could be permitted on any of these sites.
Correct.
I keep seeing inn on that first list. What's the difference between an inn and a hotel again?
It's the style of building and the number of rooms. Would you be willing to exclude inns as well? Yeah, that's all going to be off the list as well. I don't think you have the land to put a hotel or an inn out there.
I don't think so. And just go over the buffer just one more time. I know we went over it at length last time, but, just.
Sure, the developer is asking for a reduction from the 80-foot buffer on parcel C to 35 feet. That's approximately from the property line, not the back of the building, the property line. It's about 382 feet from the property line of the nearest neighbor. We spoke with some citizens, and they have some concerns about what could be back there. I do want to point out, any loading areas would need to be screened with evergreen trees. The parking areas will need to be screened with evergreen shrubs and trees as well. Yes, there is an elevation difference from the lot 73, 74, 75. Parcel C, the back of it is down low, is lower, approximately 20 feet. What they're showing here is a 2-story above grade mini storage. There is a third story below grade. So along 73, you'll only see 2 stories. Find that elevation here real quick. So this is what you would see going along Sanford Road. On the back, you'd have that black wall, the blank wall. So anything back there in the storage loading area would be screened with evergreens to create a opaque screen. And yes, it would take time for those trees to grow up for maturity to create the full buffer. Correct, correct. Yes. There is a walking trail. Went out there with some of the residents last week, and they did remove a lot of the trees back in this area right here for the BMP, now known as SCMs. There still is a healthy stand of trees there. You can, standing on the trail, look back and see the backs of the homes. They're obscured with trees, but you can still see them, as well as, you could see out this Highway 73. So we would look to mimic what's out there today, if not improve the situation. Correct. 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 Exactly.
Okay, more questions for staff? Michael?
Just to tell, to follow up on it, about the maturity of the trees, because there's all kind of maturity of trees. They
Sure.
could seedlings to 6 feet trees. 6
Correct.
feet grows faster than a 1 foot. So what level of maturity are these trees supposed to be?
Sure, they'll be evergreen trees. At installation, they will be 2-inch in caliper, 8 feet in height at minimum. The developer can choose to install greater trees. These trees, we're going to guess that you're probably going to put a cedar, redbud, those types of things will be 30 to 50 feet tall, depending on the species picked. So we'll need to make sure we know the elevation difference between the bottom and the top of the story of the building to make sure we can screen that building appropriately, and they pick the right species.
Okay, if there's no other questions for staff, if the applicant would like to come up and present. And
Yep.
And Mr. Palillo, you have 15 minutes, sir.
Okay. My name is Jake Palillo. I'm Brookshire Development, the owner of Brookshire Development. One of the very first things I want to tell is that we had a tenant who was interested in a doggy daycare resort. It wasn't set in stone. I listened to what the residents say. I wouldn't want it near me. I'm not putting it near you, so it's out. We'll go through real quickly what we've got here. And what I've done is I've been working with one of the commissioners who's been working with the 2 HOA boards. So we've offered to give some stuff, and we'll go through it. And you can see from this right here that the 80-foot setback buffer is supposed to be from the residential property line. So you can see that there's a huge buffer of 378 feet on one side, 476 feet on the other side, 230 and 254. So the intent of an 80-foot setback was originally from the back of a residential property line, not from common open space. That gives them additional space. This shows you here what NCDOT is going to be taking for easements along the way. We went through all the uses over there. So the intent is not to be underhanded, not to be slippery, the intent is to bring more retail uses that are close to the neighborhood. Where corporate business brings more industrial uses, doesn't really benefit any of the neighbors. So if we bring a retail, a dry cleaners, a small pub in those areas, the people in the back can come right out in there without having to travel all the way to Brookdale. So we've eliminated a lot of the uses in there, and if there's anything you see in there that you don't really think fits that use, I'm open to going through that. You'll see the conditioned indoor space. What people will tell you is that they're 94% occupied throughout the marketplace. So there is a need for additional storage. We track that all the time. We can keep track of what it is. See where the building is, and this will give you, and it'll show you, you were asking some questions on the buffer behind and all the trees. So you'll see all the additional trees back there. And there is a walking trail back there. We are working with the town, and we are possibly going to get involved and maybe pave it or make it out of concrete for the HOA. One of the problems in there is a lot of it's really steep. So in areas that we can improve it, put park benches back there, we as a developer will go back and fix the trail for you, as long as it meets the handicap requirements in the slope. Some areas, I walked it today, and I need to exercise a little more because I almost had a heart attack climbing out of there. It's pretty steep in a couple areas. Very curb, the street appeal doesn't look like a storage building. We're going to own the project, so we want to have an attractive building. The daycare, where everyone keeps talking about the concern over the playground out front. If the playground was not out front, that building would be pushed real close to the street. So if you're worried about a car, first of all, in the 25 years that I've lived in the area, I haven't seen a car run off the road and hit a building locally. So you have the playground there where the kids are going to be in there occasionally. versus under the current zoning now is campus business, that building would be pushed all the way up closer to the building. So you would have the same concern of a car hitting the actual building versus the outdoor. So we've put guardrails up there. Some of that fence area, there'll be concrete pillars that'll have fencing in between it. So we'll put all the safety. No, we don't want to see an unsafe condition there. I will tell you this, you have a 55-mile-an-hour road, and you have a 10-foot multi-purpose path proposed by NCDOT 2.5 feet behind the back of curb. Anyone's walked on a 55-mile-an-hour road, and the semi passes you doing 55 miles an hour, almost blows you over. So that's not something that we can do, but as a town, I would go back after NCDOT and tell them that you want that moved. That shows you all the green space there. The playground will be well landscaped and buffered, so you won't see it. That shows you the daycare center. It's an attractive building. This slide here shows you the common area that is already part of the Northbrook community there. So that outline in green, that's their common open space. That's common open space right there where you see the two BMP ponds in there. That's another big, huge common open space. To the bottom here, there's a little area. That's part of the, what's the arrow here? That little where's it?
The other clicker.
Oh. Well, anyhow, that little space down below, that's common open space for the other community. And that's more common open space right there for them. And this is the back of the homes several of these people reside at. So what we're willing to do, and you can put it in, the thing is we'll give 10 green giants. Those lots are about 50 or 60 feet across. We'll give each resident, and we'll plant 10 green giants, 6 foot on center. So it'll give each one of them a natural. There's 37 homes that back up to that little area, and we'll either provide it to the HOA or we'll provide it to each resident if they want it on the HOA property or they want it on their property. But we'll space them 6 foot on center. So green giants grow about 3 feet a year, and it'll give you a nice buffer all the way through there, and you won't see those BMP ponds. So that's about it. So the use with the TIA, so everyone understands it. It brings up a lot of questions about TIA. 1 in 40 years of developing, I've never read one. I don't care what they say. It's what NCDOT tells you need to put for road improvements. The way the project currently is under campus business or corporate business is any use you put in, you have to update the TIA. So today we put was corporate business, a daycare was allowed. So I have to upgrade the TIA. If I go and put a restaurant in there, it's going to increase the traffic from the use over corporate business. I have to do another TIA. If I go and put something else in and it increases, I have to do another TIA. So the TIA is a moving thing that every time we put a tenant in one of those spaces and it intensifies the traffic, we have to upgrade the TIA, which is always done on a staff level. Right now under corporate business, it's all managed through staff. So if I put a restaurant in, I don't have to come back before the planning board or town board to have them approve the TIA. They refer to NCDOT. If NCDOT tells me I have to widen 73 2 lanes, if I want to put that tenant in there, I've got to do what they say. There's no negotiation. A lot of times when the town does a TIA, there's always negotiation and trade-offs. That's when the boards get involved and then they have to approve that. So we'll comply with what the TIA, what NCDOT directs us. It's a little slower process right now because they're in that STIP project, because they're already in the design of 73. So all the TIAs now have to go to Raleigh for the STIP team to go through them, and it's a little longer process to turn around. But whatever they tell us, as a condition, we'll do what they tell us what the improvements are. And sadly, every improvement we put in within 24 months when they start that road will all be ripped out. So, any questions?
All right, thank you, sir. Questions for the applicant? Go ahead, Barry.
I'm more comfortable with the play yard with the additions you've proposed. I am curious, though, I assume, I heard you say part of it was the building would be closer to the highway if you didn't have that. But is there other reason, is there topography reason that it would be more difficult to put the play yard in the side or to the back? Or is it just simply,
The way the state law is on daycares is the way the classrooms are and the way they have the different age groups. There's basically 3 different play yards. So if you look at the plan, Horizon Daycare is the operator. They need the doors out, coming out of their room, and the way they manage it and stuff, where they have staffing, where if they have adjoining doors, and so if one of the teachers has to use a restroom, the other one stands in the door so they can see both classrooms. So it's kind of really regulated to where they need to have that kind of spaced out.
it also, now that you mentioned that, it also sounds like you would almost have to flip it and parking wouldn't be allowed on that side of the building anyways.
No, you can't put parking in, well, you can put parking in the front, but then you have to buffer it. You have to buffer the parking. But we've agreed not to put parking in the front as another one of the conditions
Okay.
to satisfy. Currently, we can put parking in the front right now, under the existing zoning that it's zoned for right now.
All right, other questions for the applicant? You do? Go for it.
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion. In considering the proposed rezoning amendment petition R24-04, Northbrook Storage, Planning Board recommends approval of the rezoning to special purpose with the following conditions. 1, reduce uses as defined in staff report and adding commercial outdoor kennel and inns as prohibited uses. Approve the modification of the buffer width on parcel C as proposed. 3, recommend approval of parcel A modification to allow daycare playgrounds in front yard as currently modified and presented. 4, developer commits to providing and installing at minimum 10 green giants trees to each home lot adjoining the common area. These will be planted 6 foot on center. Number 5, any TIA improvements required with the revised scoping package be addressed on the plan with the final TIA. Address other minor staff comments. It is reasonable and in the public interest to approve the rezoning if the recommended revisions are made to the plan, as it would then be consistent with the future land use implementation policies LU 6.1, 8.1, and EV 1.2.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion?
Let me start since I made the motion.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'll start since I made the motion. I said this earlier. I kind of look at these cases as where do we stand today? What is permitted by right today? And then what are we gaining? What are we losing by moving forward if we do approve a plan? I personally think that the storage unit is a good use for that difficult parcel. I think the developer has made some concessions in the way of adding some buffers. I'm glad to see that he, in the last 5 minutes, removed outdoor kennels, because that was going to be a condition of mine anyway. That would have, whether it would have passed or not, I don't know, but it was, I agree with you all, that's too close, so I'm glad that's been removed. And Chris, thank you for bringing up ends. I didn't pick up on that earlier, but thank you for bringing up ends. So I feel like we've allowed some additional uses by having special purpose, but nothing that I think will pose any issues. And hopefully we've opened it up to maybe there will be some retail uses that, residents in the close proximity can enjoy. So those are my reasonings.
I'll just reiterate, one of the major concerns I have, and it's not so much with the developer as it is with simply Sanford. It is a high-volume road, and at some point it breaks. And I would like to think that DOT would be able to keep the citizenry informed of changes that are occurring there. This is something maybe staff can facilitate, is some level of communication between DOT and the community, so you're not surprised one day when you see something going on Sanford that's being re-engineered and redesigned. That's a critical piece, and also as the applicant come back with additional requests and changes, that has to be approved by the board to ensure that there's a traffic analysis that's also done that confirms that it's doable without bringing undue damage to the community and the road in general.
Other discussion?
I'll just weigh in that I'll support this, and I'd like the way it's changed over the last month or so. It's improved. I think this is a good protection for this property. I mean, the storage is a good use for that piece. The daycare, you could do that by right. The other two pieces, I think this will give us some opportunity, like you said, to see some commercial come in here, but I do like the way the developers has listened to the public and made the modifications. I was kind of disappointed when the trail along 73 disappeared, but I understand why for all those reasons, so I'll be supporting this.
Clarifying question for staff. Are you comfortable with,
My fumble?
no, the way Scott laid out the condition
Yes.
to address the offer for the plantings? Is it just good being against, how'd you word it? Homes adjacent to the common area? Are you good with that, or do you need like address?
That works for
bands?
staff. We're comfortable.
Okay.
I'll add one more comment. Thank you guys for showing up and coming out. I know you probably, again, we're just recommending this. This does not pass tonight. The town council will finally decide. I guess my time's up. You probably didn't get everything you want, maybe close to what you want, but I do think that it is a better plan, and I'm glad that the applicant chose to come back a second time, and I think it's a better plan. Again, he's given up some things that he probably didn't want to, but hopefully at the end of the day, everybody realizes this is better than where we started. And again, thank you guys for your participation, because I know you have a lot of hours and energy put into this, so thank you.
Okay, if no other discussion, we'll go ahead and take a vote then. All those in favor of the motion on table? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So what we'll do is we're going to take a 3-minute recess because I know almost everyone here was for that. So we'll go ahead and let you guys clear out, and then we will go back. Mr. Henson, we will call you back at some point. All right, welcome back, everybody, except for one. So can I get a motion to bring our recused board member back?
Motion to bring Jay Hensley back.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Mr. Henson, come join us, sir. Okay, second item on the agenda this evening, it's consider a recommendation on rezoning 24-03. It's Long Creek Retail, boy, located at the intersection of Mount Holly Huntersville Road and Beatty's Ford Road. Yes, sir.
I'm going to recuse myself.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recuse myself. My firm represents an adjoining property owner.
Okay.
Make a motion to recuse Scott Hansen from this hearing.
Okay, we've got a motion, we got a second. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, Mr. Hensley is recused. All right, Mr. Priest, if you would.
Good evening, everyone. So this item, R2403, came before the planning board last month, but with some staff discussions and concerns on the site plan, the applicant requested a continuance for this evening. So we're back here for this application, and so we never really went over the presentation for the planning board, so we wanted to do that, even though we did do the presentation, staff did at the public hearing. So I'll quickly go through that. The site in question here is in the corner of Beatty's Ford Road and Mount Holly Huntersville Road. The application is to rezone the property that is hatched on the plan from Highway Commercial CD to Highway Commercial CD. So it's essentially modifying or changing the plan that was approved back in 2008. So I just went ahead we went ahead and clipped this plan to show you the plan from 2008. So generally, the land was the same, land area was the same as proposed. On the corner, however, was a drugstore. So you had a phase 1 at the corner, you had a phase 2, which was also a retail building up a little bit to the north. A difference here, though, which will come into play in the discussion a little bit later, there were 2 public streets on either ends of the development. So that was some connectivity that was proposed in the small area plans that they kept in there and conditioned themselves to. Elevations had a kind of a rustic appeal, had a clock tower in the corner of it. So that was, again, in harmony with the Beatty's Ford small area plan and the small area plans that try to keep a more rural aesthetic for this area in the Beatty's Ford Road corridor. So what's proposed tonight is a modification of this approved plan that you see right there. Since 2008, a few things have changed. Everything has not been static in the area, as we've seen all throughout town. So we wanted to show a slide to try to update you on what has changed. So you can see in the back, there's been a residential development. I forget the name of it. Oak Grove Hill residential subdivision. So that's a key element, because as you'll see, coming down to the south, coming toward the intersection, there is a street stub. That stub's at the larger property in the back. So that's going to be built. Immediately adjacent to the northeast of the subject property here was a conditional rezoning plan for a senior living apartment complex. That was approved by the town board. However, we have spoken with others, and it doesn't seem that project's moving forward at this time, and we think it is marketed. So that property is open for probably a resale. But that's assuming things right now. We don't know that generally, but conversations we've had on the staff level with realtors and so forth. But through that property, they reserved and dedicated land to continue the stub that Oak Grove Hill had to their property line. So ultimately, there was right-of-way and an establishment of a future road to this subject property on the northern edge. So keep that in mind, again, as we go forward. So here's the site plan that's proposed for the modification. Again, the same properties, a proposed building and another retail building on the corner. It would be a gas station for phase 1. And then for phase 2, similar to 08, is also a retail building, phase 1 and phase 2. There is a public street on the northern end to make that connection, but notice that is in phase 2 of the development there. So there's the site plan. And there was the elevations that were approved, well, not approved, but submitted with the application for the rezoning. I think the applicants got further elevations that they can show you, but these are with the official submittal. You see that it's very kind of farmhouse-esque, trying to keep that rural aesthetic and appeal for the Beatties Ford Road corridor, which staff thinks is very appropriate. And so that's a very unique gas station design. So that's a good element of the plan. So a couple concerns that staff had back at the public hearing and kind of continued on to the planning board discussion. So one with the phasing, I noted the phasing, phase 1, phase 2. The public street is located in phase 2. There's not any concrete development plans for the property for phase 2 right now. So honestly, phase 2 is somewhat theoretical. Phase 1 is what's proposed from a rezoning perspective and a construction perspective to take place. So it's very possible that we could just have the gas station, phase 1, and then the building right next to it as phase 1 only, and then the adjacent phase 2 just never develops. And so what staff's concern is if phase 2 doesn't develop, then that public street doesn't develop, and then there's no connectivity between this development and perhaps proposed development that would come immediately behind it, and that Oak Grove Hill already established infrastructure near it. So that's a concern, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the 2040 plan discussion in a couple slides. Another concern, buffer requirements, and these are just simply the buffer area is going to be graded into. They're asking for a modification to take down the existing trees. So with that modification, they're putting in very steep slopes. And so the concern is where will the vegetation that's required, the dense vegetation, be able to thrive and grow to function well in that environment. So we're concerned about that. So that's a concern. So going back to connectivity discussion with phase 2, part of the Huntersville zoning ordinance is making sure that, especially in commercial development, which this area in the Beatties Ford Road Small Area Plan and the 2040 plan, when it's called for commercial, that those commercial areas connect. There's stubs, so if you want to go from one development to the next development, you don't have to go into the street to go into the next development. You can go right through parking lot to parking lot, or in this case, from street to parking lot. So we have a concern that, one, they're not showing a dedication to build a connection to stub to that property, which is zoned residential now, but again, in this area, it's proposed to be commercial at the corner. So not being able to make that connection is a concern. And then number 2, even we're more cautious that if you look at the top right, that grade is going to make it very difficult to make a connection at all, because you're talking about, I think, an 8 or 9 foot difference between the street and the adjacent property. So somehow making a connection would be very problematic there. So that's a concern, being able to make connection and meeting those policies of the 2040 plan. So here, getting to the 2040 plan, you'll see the corner of Mount Holly Huntersville Road and Beatties Ford Road. That area is in an activity area. So in that activity area, you're looking for mixed use commercial more intensified uses. So having retail, having even a gas station, highway commercial, those are appropriate uses. So we're calling out that that's commercial is appropriate there, right? So you see that. However, what we're concerned with is with the phasing and with the kind of isolating itself and not having the construction of the infrastructure and the connections in phase one, it becomes more of an isolated development, and it's really not what the 2040 plan calls out there for Long Creek Village is a low-intensity urban village. It's not necessarily a village if it has no relationship with the development that's around it. So that's the concern, just having phase one and a standalone automotive gas station and nothing else. And then, of course, the 2040 policy of connectivity kind of lends into that same discussion. So that's a concern. And also with TreeSafe, the applicants are required to save 30% of their specimen trees. They're saving, I think, 5%, so they're not hitting that mark. The ordinance does allow them to do TreeSafe mitigation, to plant more trees, but in this case, probably wouldn't be able to plant many more, so pay into the tree fund bank. However, you know, the 2040 plan is focusing on, hey, let's save existing mature trees so we don't lose them. So it's difficult, and the applicants are not doing that, so that's an inconsistency. So with that said, the staff recommendation here, because of our concerns, is not to recommend approval of the application as it is today. However, you know, it is consistent with the commercial location on the corner. Staff could support it. If perhaps that street was put into phase one, if we could redesign the buffers to blend in and function better, and we can get connectivity to that side parcel and redesign the site a little bit. So I say that with the understanding that the applicant has talked to staff, the project manager, Jesse James, about making some changes to the plan. So I think they're going to be able to come up here after me and just try to tell you how they're going to do that. But currently, as the plan stands right now, these concerns still remain unaddressed in the plan. So that's where we are currently. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Priest. Questions for staff?
Can you go back to the plan view, that shows the road? So they're to the north, I guess, in phase two. That road doesn't currently exist, correct?
Correct. So that road would stub right now to what was the Mosaic Senior Assisted Living Center, which didn't commit to construct, but only to, was it dedicate or reserve? Reserve right-of-way for that connection through there.
So the ask from the town is for him to pave up to that dark gray and just stop right there?
Correct.
In phase one?
Correct. Yes, sir.
All right.
On that same topic, do we have any faith that this other road will ever get built, or, and if it will, it'll get built there? I mean, is a road to nowhere possible?
So, I mean, the idea that we're sitting here talking about redeveloping this corner is pretty much evidence to us that that's picking back up. And the ability to have not only this redevelop, but the Mosaic redevelop is almost an opportunity to get that connection, because we have it with the subdivision behind it. So if Mosaic does come back in and redevelops, that would be something staff would be very interested in to make happen.
Okay, zoom out and show me the road in Mosaic that connects to where this one would be then. See if I can find it again. Thought I saw it real early.
So, whoops, there's the little, oh, the other clicker, sorry.
The other clicker.
Just keep hitting it, it's not working. So here would be the stub, and so.
A Mosaic, okay.
And there's the Mosaic, that would be the missing link to make that connection. So if this comes back in and redevelops, that's a beautiful opportunity to make a connection for a lot of residential, not just them, but also other areas around the region there.
And the road in Mosaic's currently stubbed out into that open space right before the floodplain.
Correct.
Okay, okay.
Another question about the road. Like I've seen before where like a building, like a road would be built because there would need to be frontage or something like that. Where in this case, it's not required from a frontage standpoint, right, from any of the buildings, because it's fronting on Beatty's Ford.
That's right.
When do we, I guess, require right-of-way to be dedicated versus a road to be built? Or is there a requirement, it's more of an ask? I'm trying to figure out, constructing a road versus dedicating the right-of-way.
It's more of an ask to make it more conforming and in harmony with the 2040 plan. That's seeking to make a village, that's seeking connectivity, that's seeking those principles. So the best case scenario is, this development goes and, finds more parcels of land and develops a mixed-use type development on this corner where everything blends in together and is harmonizing, and it creates an urban village like the 2040 plan referenced it as, right? So that's the best case scenario. What staff is saying, okay, you can't do that. You're coming in with these segmented parcels. That's fine. The commercial fits. But how are we going to have a relationship with other development? How are you going to create that village and fill these principles? The answer is, at the very least, have some type of infrastructure where somebody can come in behind it and tap right into it and then make it seamless. And that's what we're recommending here, especially through the conditional rezoning process now, where we're asking that question, are you not meeting the minimums? What are you doing to go above and beyond? If you're asking for modifications of the ordinance, what can you give that's going to be excellent design? And this is a nice opportunity to do that, to say we're not just doing a gas station, we're going to do something that's going to blend in with the community and the neighborhood.
I mean, along those same line, I would assume, as I look at this layout of the community and the parcel under consideration, it's a walkability issue, which goes back to 2040 again. We need to build neighborhoods where literally if those people over there want to walk down there and get a hot dog from Circle K, they don't get in their car and drive around in order to get there.
That's absolutely right. Yep.
So I
Well,
get
just to
it.
confirm, in there, Greenway that's going through there, right there, Long Creek, Greenway Phase 3, I believe, or 2, is adjacent to the,
Through the stream, it doesn't look like, this is a context map, so I don't think there's a greenway. Is there a greenway going? Right.
And the Greenway,
Ford and Mount Holly, Huntersville Road.
yeah, I mean, Greenway's a good thing, but in reality, you got people who are walking down streets. So they're not necessarily going to be on a greenway in order to go and access the retail that's there at Circle K and what other retailers are there. A more fundamental question, I'm a little taken back in that the last meeting we had, it was pretty clear there was a lot of issues associated with the app. And the young lady who addressed us said, hey, I'll be taking this back and we'll be getting lots more done. But I'm not hearing lots more. And maybe we'll hear that when they get up to present, but I was left with the impression we'd hear something much more complete at this session than what we did the last time.
So if we were to approve this, then we're just waiting on phase 2 to come in, right? That road has to, if the site's developed, that road has to go in there.
So that's staff's recommendation. Right now, phase 2, there are no commitments to it. It's just phase 1. So staff's recommendation is when you do phase 1, add a note to the plan that says the street will be constructed and stub with phase 1. And then,
Oh, we're not just declaring that a right-of-way in perpetuity as long as that condition exists for phase 2.
we're asking for the infrastructure to be built.
And it's probably for the applicant. Is this more of an order of things where it's easier to do the site work when the phase 2 goes in and do the street at the same time? Is that?
So I think the challenge here that the applicant has communicated to us, and they can talk about it as well, there's 2 different property owners here. And the property owner on phase 2 is looking to rezone the property, but they're not developers. They're the owners of the property, they're not developers, they're not looking to do it at this time. So it's been a negotiation between the two property owners. Well, okay, and we understand the need, the applicant understands the need to have that infrastructure, but who's paying for it and when? And so that's a discussion that's been happening, and they've been working on that behind the scenes, and we're here now, and I understand that the applicants are actually looking to say, yes, we'll do it at phase one now. So that's been moving forward.
Follow up some more on that connective road. Just so I understand it, the suggestion is to build out this new road in phase two to connect to a road that's not there, right?
Correct. Currently not completed, yes.
Okay, and then but you also mentioned the stub, to do a stub, but that may not be possible because of the topography in that area.
With the current grading, yes. It would be very difficult.
So I guess what I'm confused about, I'm not understanding it correctly. We're recommending them build the road, but the stub would be difficult to do. Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
Let me go back.
So what we're saying is this stub to the north would be challenging due to the topography, not to the east.
Yeah.
This one right here.
But there's nothing he can, this person can do about that.
They can change the elevation.
They can change the elevations.
Oh,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So we're asking for a rework.
Yeah, we're asking him to lower his to make it easier for the next person that comes in.
Correct.
Oh, I got you, okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and we can work that out. We can work with the applicant. But generally, what we're saying right now is grading is kind of a problem in lots of different areas for the buffers and for the connection to the adjacent street. So that's going to have to be generally just worked on. And we can do that with the applicant. We just want to make sure at this point in the game, high level, we're committing to do that, to make it work.
It also reminds me of the slope. I'm pretty sure I understand it, but just to make sure. It was mentioned that it currently has 2-to-1.
That's what it looks like.
Recommend, and the bigger that number, the smaller the slope. Just, is that right?
More general.
The more general the slope. So
Yes.
3-to-1, 4-to-1 the slope
Correct.
gets
It
smaller.
gets smoother.
Okay.
That's correct. And our
Kind
ordinance
of backwards
requires
of
it.
what you think. The bigger the number, the bigger the slope. But
Right.
it's okay.
Exactly.
So going back to the aerial that you had there, we talked about the stub being to here, correct? The stub has been built to right there.
That's correct.
And, I mean, this, I forget the name of the thing. They were gonna build the road right there, correct? Inside of their property line.
They were going to dedicate the right-of-way, and I think part of their parking lot or something was going to act and function
Right.
as a road for it to be dedicated later.
Yeah, this is the old plan, but you're asking this applicant to build the road to there. So my two questions are, who's responsible for this bridge and to connect back to this neighborhood? This section here, and then this one right here, who's responsible for that?
So nobody's responsible for it yet. There's a couple options. Option one would be if the Mosaic developer comes back in, they want to do something else, maybe it's an apartment building, maybe it's something else that fits in the 2040 plan, they rezone the property again, and we have that discussion again to fill that gap and to make that whole. And if they need modifications in the ordinance to do, so we have the tools now where we can have that negotiation if someone's coming in to say, this is really important, this is a way to really, help the neighborhood in this area, we would ask them to do it. Or, number two, they come in, it doesn't get done, there's a gap right here, but we want to make that happen, perhaps that gets on the CIP.
And that's
The
what I
town
was
does it.
thinking, yeah. I mean,
At some point.
especially when you're asking for a bridge, I mean, it's gotta be a pretty big, development for somebody to wanna build a, $2 million bridge across that creek, right? So I'm wondering if we put something in the CIP, which I know isn't this group's purview, but would that entice them to wanna build that road in phase one they can see a means to this connectivity.
You, when you're dealing with the CIP and you're dealing with these transportation projects, you're wanting to deal with the low-hanging fruit.
Right.
So if you've got a road built from Beatty's Ford Road to the stub, you've got another road coming to the stub, and all you're missing is that gap, it becomes very, very attractive to try to close that gap. So we couldn't commit to that,
Right.
honestly, right now, but that's something that we would certainly look at as a town, I would think.
Yeah, it's like chicken and egg. You're asking him to build this road or this developer to build this road when there's really no foreseeable plan. But if we put the foreseeable plan, maybe they're more apt to build the road.
Exactly, and what's more likely to get built? A large gap or a small gap? So the less gap we have, the more likely it'll be connected.
So who owns this property to the, I guess, east of the creek right there?
East of the creek, that's all in the same parcel.
Oh, that's part of it's part of that, okay.
This is all the same parcel.
So they would, I got you. Well, we approved the plan like that without them crossing the creek.
Correct.
So I did that, I was the project manager for that rezoning. They dedicated the right-of-way across the creek.
Oh, okay. They gave that to the town, okay. All right.
Nice telestrator work there, John Madden.
Yeah.
Wow, stepping up his game. I do have a couple questions. Can you think of other properties around town that have had a similar situation where it's been phased with no definitive timelines or anything like that, where then ultimately the other parcel has not done anything, has never turned over, where, even better example, if it was one that included some sort of infrastructure or potential infrastructure tied to it. I mean, I don't want to make it sound bad, as in I just cannot think of a different phrase. So any of my colleagues jump in, but where the town, if you will, has been burned, and I don't really mean burned, but you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, when you phase infrastructure, it becomes very difficult, and depending on how you phase it, it can be imperative, because you may never get that back in. There's one project, I won't speak to who it is, where they backloaded the last parcel, and that parcel is very difficult to sell because of the required improvements. We're a little gun shy because of that. That's the reason why we're recommending that the road would be built as part of phase one.
Okay.
I can speculate, I don't know, I've always wondered where Bojangles and, is it AutoZone?
Yeah, that's a private street.
And then there's a gas station but they don't connect behind it. They both have stubs.
Right.
I've always wondered,
Public and private street.
that's why they could.
Did you want to draw it?
Yeah.
No? All right.
So, and I would say it happens in a general sense, and, it's common for things to get phased like that, and I would say that staff is, especially after our text amendment with rezonings, we're trying to pay attention to that. We're trying to pay attention to the phasing because, again, we're talking about even the conditions for a piece of property that was rezoned back in 2008, and nothing's come from it. So that was a long time ago. So we're trying to understand what could happen if you're doing things on phase one and not in phase two. What does that actually mean?
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff? No? Okay. Would the applicant like to come up?
Evening.
Hey there, and you have 15 minutes?
All right. I'm really going to make this quite short and sweet and simple. I think Brad and Jesse have done a great job explaining what our issues are. We agree. We are coming here to say it is because we have two property owners, and last month when we needed a extension, we needed to come together to make sure that we could agree to all of staff's requests, and we can. So our plan has not changed because I would say that negotiations are really fun. So, but the plan hasn't changed yet, but we will change that plan to reflect those changes, as well as looking at that grading issue to get that connection to the north. We understand that as this is developed parcel by parcel, what really the town has put into place back 20 years ago at least was the start of a plan that said, if you want to develop parcel by parcel, this is the bones to that. And so that's what we're trying to do with kind of this change from a drugstore use to a convenience store. Is there anything else do I need to start with my name, any address, anything like that? Just went right into it. Really, we're just here to answer your questions that you may have. I don't really want to take up too much time. I have a team of people here that can answer specific questions. But yes. I was itching to say, like, we agree. We can. I was just going to let you go in at some point. Okay, my name is Whitney Hodges, and I represent the applicant.
So we're saying that the road's going in phase one.
The road is going in phase one.
I like it.
I don't know which one.
How about the grading changes to the north and west? Can those be accommodated as well? Can you raise your grade to be able to accommodate the connection?
We still need to look at that through an engineering lens, but we certainly can make notes to make sure that that is achievable in construction.
Other questions for the applicant? Jody?
What about timeline? Do you have any idea for phase one, phase two, when you're all talking?
I will let the construction people, I'll let Jeff take care of that one.
Hey, good evening. Jeff Maflai, I am the applicant. As far as timing, we are looking about year to 2 years maximum. It depends on how challenging is the design and availability of construction and materials and contractors. So give and take will be.
That's for phase one?
Yes.
And then for phase two?
That's not in my control. It's my neighbors, and
Oh,
it's
okay.
on the market for sale. And when the right buyer comes, they probably will move faster. I'm sure my development will attract development to the rest of the parcels there. And yet I'm paying the highest price of all, doing the road.
That's what it is.
Is that owner here or no?
They're not.
Okay.
So, go ahead, Michael.
Say, did I miss the part on the vegetation slope in terms of how that's to be accommodated?
So we still have to look at that through engineering. And so we will agree to make sure that that staff is satisfied with the buffer, the slopes, and the stub.
What about the specimen tree mitigation? Like, I know when it was put on one plan, it looked like it was on top of a grid. I just didn't know what the grid was and what was happening there.
So because of the tightness of the site and trying to get all of what we need to get on the site, we will likely be contributing to the mitigation fund. We will put as many trees on site as we can, and then contribute the rest.
Sorry, just a casual observation. You did say this is a Circle K, right?
Yes.
I ain't seen many Circle Ks with lots of trees. I just haven't. All of them seem to be kind of, that's it. Just an observation.
Any other questions for the applicant? So then I have one, and it is more along the lines of what Chris was asking and going through what's acceptable and whatever. At this point, for our purposes, what are your official modification requests?
Okay, so we have modifications. Does Jesse have the, because there's a slide with the modifications that, from
I thought there were only two. I thought it was the buffer.
No, not the street. The buffer, the trees, annexation. And reduction of the
Yes,
buffer,
that's it. Yeah, so it's the fully grading the buffers, and then the buffer width on the left-hand, the right-hand side. So it's supposed to be 30, they're proposing a 15-foot buffer. So those are the two modifications.
Okay. All right. And so what we've discussed here so far doesn't change those from what was in the report. So, perfect, we have that. Okay, other questions for the applicant? If not, I will take a motion.
So I can say, I don't have a motion, but I can speak to my dilemma. It feels like we have a incomplete plan still, or at least I suppose we can create a motion. I was leaning towards staff recommendation of denial. Now I'm leaning towards approval, but I don't have a guide for that approval motion. And I want to build out the updates that they have agreed to make to meet staff's
Right.
requests. But we don't have that in the staff report.
That's correct. I would say when we've come across this in the past, we end up cobbling something together. I would say the good news is you have an amenable applicant and staff hearing this news and kind of telling us, hey, this is probably going to go, and then applicant confirming what staff said, confirming with Chris. So we have probably the things you're looking for, and we just have to piece it together. And we will help you as well. I'm ready to. Yeah.
Sure, I'm gonna
Greg, keep an eye on him.
In considering the proposed rezoning amendment petition R-2403 for Long Creek Retail, the planning board recommends approval of the proposed rezoning plan because of the following revisions: inclusion of the public street connection during Phase 1 to ensure the necessary infrastructure to connect to adjacent parcels is developed upfront. Adding the stub connection to the adjacent property for future connectivity. The buffer's not included, so I'm leaving that one out. Correct? Yeah. Yeah. So with these revisions, the plan is consistent with future land use implementation policies EOS-3, LU 8.2, T3, and T3.1, and is reasonable in the public interest to approve the plan as submitted.
The only thing I think, and staff can correct me, but the slope and the stabilization.
Yeah, I'm wondering, why was the buffer recommendation left out? Were you planning to do that, or no?
I was trying to say why we were approving it, but they're not.
Well, what you would recommend is the condition that they do stabilize the buffers. Right.
Oh, but you guys are going to stabilize
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Let me start all over.
No, I think that's fine. You can just add another one.
Yep. Add redesign of the required buffers to stabilize the slopes and ensure healthy plant growth. For some reason, I didn't think they were including that. That's my bad.
Okay, second.
All right, we have a motion. We have a second. Any discussion on that motion on the table? Do you want to start? Is it yours? Jody, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, I really like the elevation of the building. I thought y'all did a really good job with that. It's a nice gateway into Huntersville. It looks great. I do hope the retail shop comes in very quickly and someone purchases that property. The TIA requirements, changing the road there, I think is probably very beneficial, and the way they thought about getting the tanker truck in there is great. And just that the grades, I think it could be very beneficial for that area of town.
Any other discussion?
No, I just want to thank the applicant for being able to work with the town and, you know, add that connectivity, what we're looking for. Appreciate it.
Okay, if no other discussion, let's go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. Thank you very much.
I'd like to make a motion to bring Scott Hensley back to the,
There we go.
we miss you, Scott.
I'll second that. All those in favor? Any opposed? Lee, you don't care? Okay. Mr. Hensley, welcome back. Next up is other business. There is none, so you guys know what that means.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Here we go. All right, we got a motion, we got a second. All those in favor of adjournment? Any opposed? Have a good night.